Welcome back to our channel, where we explore the wonders of the world and delve into fascinating topics that ignite the curiosity within us. Today, we are diving into the captivating world of marine life with a focus on the mesmerizing coral reefs that hold an abundance of beauty and mystery. So, grab your snorkeling gear and get ready to embark on an underwater adventure like no other. This movie is based on real events. The story of the movie begins in one of the previous periods. In 1972, there was discrimination against skin color. Black people were outcasts, and that made violence an easy thing against them, and it was allowed to kill black people. It was respect and appreciation for the people of white skin, and their life was normal. As for black people, when they demand their rights, they are oppressed and beaten. But there were a large number of people who objected to this matter. Among those people are Tim and Stephen. Although their skin is white, but they carried the principles of equality and justice among people. Despite the differences between humans, a person should live a normal life. Tim and Stephen have been publishing leaflets to raise awareness among people about equality between people and to include a large number of people who object to this act against black people. Tim puts flyers in the trash. It contained a set of explosives. He could control the explosives remotely. Stephen comes to distract him from being detected, and after they blow it up, papers are scattered everywhere on 4. Fortunately, the police notice Stephen and Tim, and they know that they are the ones who put the papers in the trash, and they are arrested. They remain in detention until the verdict is issued against them. Here we see Dave, who is Tim's girlfriend. She goes to him and gives the money without anybody noticing. She tells him not to give up. She warns him not to see the money with him so that he does not get into trouble. Then we watched him in court. He will be sentenced to 12 years. This is because he was the one who made the explosives and masterminded the operation. As for Stephen, he is being ruled by 8 years because he helped him. Tim's friend was affected by the decision because her lover would be in prison for a long time, and then they are taken to jail. But Stephen decides to run away from the court. He had no way but to jump out of the window, but his plan fails and the police catches him easily. Then they are taken to prison. This prison will be heavily guarded, and the operation to escape from it is impossible, and they take a long time as they walk in the prison corridor until they reach their cells. In this prison, we see that each prisoner is put in his cell alone. Tim and Stephen are put in 2 adjoining cells, and then they sleep in jail. When they wake up in the morning, they go to the breakfast place. Tim does not know where to sit. However, a prisoner named Dennis takes Tim and sits with him at breakfast. Denise begins by explaining the prison system to Tim, and he warns him about the prisoners who wear blue because they are dangerous criminals and sentenced for murder. He tells him to make friends with people who wear the same clothes as them because they are political prisoners. Then Stephen comes to sit with them and tells them he wants to escape from prison. He does not want to spend the rest of his life in prison. Dennis tells them that it is impossible to escape from this prison, and he tells them that there are people before them who try to escape but they failed. Tim tells him he has money to help them escape. Dennis decides to help him and hide the money in a clever way. He puts the money in the toothpaste box. Here we see a prison guard torturing a prisoner because he mocked him. When Tim and Stephen witness this accident, they get very scared. Meanwhile, the time for the prison business to go out to the square begins. Tim and Stephen are running, and while they are running, they are trying to find out information about the prison. Dennis helps them and tells them that the length of the wall around the prison is 7 meters. It is surrounded by barbed wire, and there are also professional snipers to watch. Snipers take turns on duty, and that killing is the easiest thing for them. As they saw that there was a strange movement, Dennis tries to drive away the idea of running away from them because he fears for their lives. Then they are met by a prisoner named Leonardo, and he tells them Dennis is a coward. He frustrates the idea of escaping from the prison as he tells them that he might join them as they had a strong escape plan. And when the break is over, everyone goes back to their cells. The next day, we watched him transfer money to Dennis without anyone noticing, and Dennis manages to put the money in a toothpaste box, and he hides the money in a professional way so that no guard suspects them. Tim is still thinking of a prison escape plan. It has been 23 days since they entered prison. On this day, a crazy idea comes to Tim, so he takes the pencil and takes the measurements of the cell door, and he is trying to make a key for the door. Then he goes to his friends and tells them of the plan that he reached. He tells them that they must make a key out of wood to escape. Leonardo tells Tim his idea is impossible. This is because the wood breaks in the iron cell door. Also, they cannot bring wood. Tim tells him that they can obtain wood through the workshop in the prison, and he told them that he would make the keys professionally so that they would not be broken by iron. Stephen and Leonardo agree to an escape plan. Then they go to the place of food. Tim intentionally drops food on the ground. They are trying to make the guard think that they are fighting, and the guard threatens them with punishment if he continues to make problems. In the meantime, Tim memorized the shape of the keys that are with the guard and trying to draw the shape of the key that he saw, and Tim remained throughout the week watching the keys and trying to memorize their shapes. And because there are many keys, Tim decided to draw all the keys because every key opened a different door. He kept drawing with keys for days until he can draw all the keys. Tim and Stephen are in prison for 74 days. Tim was in the workshop and took the wood and put it in a red box. And every prisoner had this box and put a cloth of wood so that no sound comes out inside the box. Tim thinks of an alternative plan, and he takes gum and puts it in the moving wooden piece and tries to catch the keys by sticking it, and he tries more than once. He was finally able to pull out the key, which means the success of the plan. Tim is very happy with what he made. He is very relieved because he was afraid of being exposed. Then Tim goes to the breakfast place. He tells Leonardo and Stephen about the success of his plan. The two rejoice that they will finally be able to get out of prison. Tim was able to communicate with the cleaner, who is also a prisoner and Tim's friend, and who is responsible for throwing away the clothes for the new prisoners. Tim asks him not to throw the clothes away. Then Tim goes and takes the clothes and puts them under his clothes so that the guards do not notice him, and he hides the clothes inside his cell. And on the second day, Tim tries out the keys. Leonardo opens his cell. In the course of the experiment, a prison guard approaches them. Tim and Leonardo cannot go back to their cell, and they hide inside a safe located in the corridor. Leonardo accidentally opens the safe door. Fortunately for them, the guard was not paying attention to them. In this scene, they bury the keys in different places so as not to be detected in the event of a search by the guards, and every night they go out to discover the number of doors in the prison. Here, Tim discovers that there is an electric door and it can only be opened through the control room, but that wasn't a problem for Tim. Because he couldn't solve it, he was able to enter the control room and open it. We see here that Tim is trying to convince Dennis and some of the prisoners to escape with them. He tells him that he managed to make 39 keys, but Dennis refuses to escape. Dennis tells them that he spent his whole life in prison and that there is no point in leaving him. He wishes Tim luck in escaping. On the second day, there was a heavy search of the cells. After the search is over, Tim returns to his cell and he makes sure that the money he put inside the toothpaste box is there, because this money will be a savior for them in the event that they manage to escape. But suddenly the prison guard returns to the cell because he was suspicious of them and starts searching again, but he also can't find anything. Then everyone goes back to their cells. Tim makes the keys according to the shapes he planned. It makes identical copies of the original keys, and when he finishes, he tries it on one of the doors. Indeed, the plan succeeds, and the first door opens. Tim knows that every cell has two doors. Tim watches that the key to the second door is from outside and the window is higher than the door. He returns to think of a way to solve that problem. On the second day, they go to the place for breakfast. He tells his friends that the plan worked. They rejoice when they hear of the plan's success. Leonardo asked him to make a key for the door. Here we see 100 days since they were in prison, and we watch the prisoners cleaning up. The place was empty, so Tim tried to open the door from outside, and indeed Tim managed to open the door. Leonardo was guarding them, but the shock is that the key did not leave the door. Then Leonardo tells them that the guard is approaching. Tim takes the key out in the last moments before the guard arrives, and he tries to return the door, but he can't, and he begins to get nervous because their plan may fail. And then they return to their cells and the guard comes to close. Meanwhile, Tim is very anxious to find out about them, but the guard was not interested. He thinks the guard before him forgot to close the door. He locks the door and goes, and Tim continues to make keys to the rest of the doors. They have been in prison for 142 days. Tim was talking to Stephen and Leonardo while cleaning the cells. Leonardo tells them that something is missing from the plan. It is that they were unable to find a solution to the door, which is locked from the outside. But Stephen comes up with an idea, which is to use a cleaning stick, and when they measure the distance between the stick and the door through the window, they discover that the distance allows her to use the stick. That task falls to Tim. It is to make a stick move to open the door. Indeed, he can make a moving wooden stick and is trying to stick on the door. He puts the key on the wooden piece, and he made sure there were no guards in the prison corridor, and then he quietly puts his hand out and puts the key in the door, and he moves the wooden piece, and indeed he managed to open the door and shut it down again. But when he takes the key out, the key falls on the floor. He is very afraid because the key is left outside, but he managed to solve this problem and pull out the key. They have been in prison for 404 days, and that day was the day they were going to escape. Each one of them leaves his clothes in the cell. Tim, Leonardo, and Stephen head out. Tim bids Denise farewell before running off. He thanks him for his help, but as they descend the stairs, they see the guards coming towards them, and they hide in the corridor. In the meantime, Dennis decides to do something to help Tim and his friends escape, so he breaks the lamp of his cell. Then he asks the guard to come and fix it for him, and when the guard goes to him, they exit the corridor to Escape. They open all prison gates. This includes the electric doors, and they can easily escape. And when they reach the last door, Tim tries all the keys, but he is surprised that all the keys do not open the door. Tim asks to come back before he finds out, but Leonardo tells him that he can't go back after he got to such a place, and he will not surrender. And he kept exploring the location of the lock, brought a screwdriver, and tried to open the door. The sound of the screwdriver was so loud that Tim started watching the corridor. And Leonardo finally managed to break the door, and they wore the clothes they had taken so that they would not be distinguished as prisoners. They go out with great caution. They are waiting for the guard to move in the opposite direction to escape. Indeed, they go out of the prison and see a police car with 2 guards, but they are not identified, and then they start running to get to the parking garage. They rent a taxi, and the owner of the car is black. Tim gives the money to the driver and tells him to drive them to town. The driver is surprised because people with skin do not ride with him. He gets worried about them, but then he is reassured and they ride with him. And after they travel far from the prison, they start laughing, and they were happy because they were able to escape and did not surrender to the unjust rule. As for the prison, it was the time for the prisoners to go out to the square. The prison guards discover that there are 3 people who escaped from prison. Dennis was laughing at the prison guards because the guard was running and scared because of the 3 prisoners escaping. Then they go to London, and the government could not arrest them and subject them to the unjust rule. This film is based on real events. Don't forget to subscribe the channel, and to see one of these beautiful films, I advise you to enter the channel and watch the recap of the wonderful films.